All right, real estate community, you are not going to believe who I'm interviewing today. It is Adam Hergenrother. He is amazing. He runs the fourth largest real estate team in the nation, in North America. This dude's impressive. I can't wait for you guys to meet him. He did 11 million in GCI. They operate at a 21.4% profit margin. These numbers are massive. It's crazy. He's built this company to over $1 billion organization. He has a real estate development and construction company called BlackRock. They have 1,100 units that they have built. So it's a very large organization as well. This is somebody that we can learn a lot from, and I'm excited to share his story with you guys right now. All right, Adam, thanks for your time today. And can you briefly tell us about your journey? What got you from point A in your life of being that high schooler whose dad had to have a conversation with him to point B, this incredible, successful business leader, writer, podcaster, speaker, trainer. I mean, what don't you do? It's amazing to watch you in your journey. So can you help us kind of understand like how you came from this high schooler to where you kind of are today?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and thanks for putting these together. People don't realize how much work goes into actually producing something like this and getting the information out there to help everybody else out. So I just want to say thanks for what you're doing. Yeah, it was really interesting. For about 15, 16 years of my life, I was overweight. I was in drugs. I was kind of failing classes. I was really just that role model student you wanted your kid to hang out with. And, one day I woke up and realized, some people say that was a spiritual awakening. Some people say it was just, I was just in a lot of pain and I just wanted something more. But, when I was in that mode as a freshman in high school, one day I just came home and I said, this is not how life is supposed to be. This is not, I didn't know what it was that I was supposed to do. I didn't have a crystal ball or a treasure map to where I was going. It was just this deep sense that it was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be in my life. And this is not what my life here is supposed to be about. And so I made some very tough decisions at that point. As you mentioned, I came home and started crying, and my dad ended up coming in at one point and, and just said, hey, well, you have two choices. You can do something about it or you can accept it. And I decided at that moment that I was going to do something about it. So I ended up losing a bunch of weight, and I stopped hanging out with the people that I was hanging out with at the time. And they ended up, side story, then actually stealing everything that I owned 2 weeks later. And cops were in the school parking lot. They threatened to kill me. It was just a really bad time. And you got to remember too, I was floating around when in high school, such a pivotal time, I didn't have anybody to go to because I just left the group of friends that I had or thought were friends, and I was kind of floating in this. So, but I start with that point because people say, wow, Adam, you're 38 and you've built a lot of things and you've done a lot of stuff. And I just remind people that I just usually have more time than most. And I just started working on my own leadership at a much earlier age, if you want to call that it, just kind of self-leadership when I was 16. So really that's been 22 years now in the making to what it is today. You kind of fast forward into college. I got my first taste of leverage, and it's an important part. I had a friend in college who was living with me, but not going to college. If maybe some of you also had one of those friends in your dorms that kind of just lived, but didn't really go there. Anyways, his dad owned a car dealership, and he came to me one day and he said, hey, do you want to throw in $500 in this car? I think we can buy it. We can fix it up a little bit and probably sell it and make some money. And literally at the time, I maybe had like $1,000 total. And I was like 50% of all I have. And it's not like I was making really much money, a couple $100 a week working. And I took the money and I gave it to him, and he went and did it, bought the car, and ended up selling it like a week later. And I remember in like this 2-week period of time, I doubled my money essentially. It could maybe like $600 or $700 maybe I made, so I more than doubled it. But what it was my first taste of leverage. And it's a critical point in my life because I never saw the car. I never did any of the work. And so my money, just like every business person will teach you, just my money was actually working for me. I wasn't trading time for money. It was literally my dollars went out. And I remember just this feeling of being like, wow, like that's crazy how my, you can just make that money off there. And so then I started, we rolled over a bunch of cars, and we did this for the next kind of 6 or 8 months. And we probably both made $50,000 or $60,000 while I was in college doing this. And then he went and woke up one day and said, I don't need your money anymore. So I also learned the value of contracts.
Sure. Right.
And so we kind of went through that transition, but I had enough money at that point, and I put that money down in 2003 on a condo. And of course, in 2003, the real estate market was just zooming, right? And and I'm like, no wonder why everyone's in real estate. You put some money in, the thing just keeps depreciating by this much. I'm like, this is the easiest thing in the world. So it's kind of like my first kind of hit into real estate. And, in 2005, my note was called. It was like probably the only note that I actually know of somebody actually being called, which means that the bank required me to actually pay it off. And I was so angry at the time. It was in 2005. And I remembered that it's just like, everything's going up. It's going up. It's going up. I can't believe they're forcing me to sell. And so we ended up selling it. And lo and behold, right after I sold it, within a couple of months, the entire market started crashing. And it actually ended up being the highest sold property in there until about 2013. So from 2005 to 2013, it also taught me again that life is much more in control than I am. And so a lot of times we end up fighting reality. When life's trying to take us to the left, we end up trying to fight to go to the right. And in reality, if we had just stayed on the same path it needs us to, it actually brings us the most success, and really giving us the path that we need to go on in ourselves. It just knows a lot more than we do. It's like you don't think about your heart beating or your brain working or moving your arm or how to go and get in your car and drive it. These things just happen. And so it was a really good lesson for me there. And then kind of fast forward, and I started my real estate career in the middle of this in 2006, and I put my head down, and all I did was, this is where when I teach people and from an expansion standpoint and just agents in my market centers and HRG, when I first started in real estate, they didn't have enough space for me. So I was working at a 400 square foot apartment. I couldn't even shut the door to the bedroom because the bed took up most of the space. And I didn't have any tools or any systems. Things weren't online like they are now. There wasn't training events or all this stuff. One thing that I just did, and I always go back to this, is I just lead generated every single day longer enough. It wasn't like a 3 hour. It wasn't like a 3 hour and I checked the box, right? And like I did, it was just, I needed to get an appointment a day. And so some days some days I literally just would lead generate. And I know you take the same work ethic. I would lead generate for 12 hours a day. I just wouldn't stop until what I had to do. In that first 30 days, I put 3 homes under contract. And I remember showing up at the office meeting and for the first time kind of seeing people there, and people were like, "What'd you do?" And I actually thought I did something wrong. And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" They're like, "Well, what'd you do?" And I'm like, they're like, "How'd you put 3 homes under contract in the first 30 days?" And I said, "Well, how didn't you? What did you do? If you didn't, like, they'd be like 3 homes in the last quarter." I'm like, "Then what did you do throughout your day?" And it was just a glaring difference at that point of how people use time. And I can't say it. I didn't say it like back then as I can now, kind of going through the experiences and using words a little bit more creative. But it was just the intensity that I brought to each moment. And so it didn't matter I didn't use it as a checkbox. It was like you just said, it was my life. And I just put my head down and surrounded myself by more intelligent individuals to prove to everybody that you can go out there and succeed in any market.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's awesome. So I know a lot about your story, but our average person watching this won't know just the perspective. And you gave me a little more perspective before we started of what your organization looks like today. I mean, it's a billion-dollar business, but you have BlackRock, you have HRG, your expansion team, you're an OP. I mean, give us the full brag on yourself.
Yeah, sure. It's in real estate, obviously it's a lot easier to reach $1 billion in sales because it's there. And so it sounds a lot sexier than it is. So especially when people hear from the outside, so just kind of discredit myself a little bit for that because we have such a high average sales price for things. Sure. But so I own HRG, Hergenrother Realty Group, which last year was the 4th largest real estate, company or team in North America. We did about 11 million in GCI. We had a overall profit margin of about 21.4% from that, which is healthy in terms of being out of production. A lot of people out of production for that. That was our total profit number. And then I also own a company. I own market centers and an investor in a lot of other market centers, and majority owner in other market centers throughout the country. And which is fun. And we started a market center in Vermont, which was the last state to actually have a market center in, because we were just such a small state in itself, which is ultimately why in 2011, I actually expanded, just because, we have 450 agents in a 3-hour radius of driving. And so it was just very difficult to hit financial metrics that I wanted to, and not just for me, not from a self-index perspective, but to be able to provide opportunity and to grow and hire the amount of people that I wanted to hire. I had to be able to go across borders for all of our organizations. So that kind of trickled in from the team to the market center. The market center, I got very close to Gary for what we were doing. He started teaching me about business. And then, of course, those principles, just like, apply to any industry that you're in terms of leadership and business building. And that got me into launching BlackRock in 2012, which, has been instrumental. We have over 1,100 units in terms of senior care, residential housing units that we're building, to multifamily, and a bunch of commercial space as well too, for that as well. And that's been we started that 7 years ago. And the first couple of years, unlike real estate in itself, you can come in there in very low barriers to entry. The first couple of years of starting BlackRock, I put, $500,000, $700,000, $600,000 a year into without turning a dime. And it wasn't really until probably the third 3.5 years into it that we actually started seeing a return from those, because if people are investors and you're doing it at a large scale, you know how much money and time goes into it before, even when you start the project, you don't get your money back, right? It's not really towards the end of projects that you actually get them stabilized. You actually start seeing income come back in there. So it took 3.5 years of ramp up time to really get that company going. And now we're on a really good trajectory, which is exciting to see. We own Adam Hergenrother Training, which we have one-on-one coaching. We have our group trainings. We have Carrie Heibel, which you probably know is the president of that organization as well too. And we just take a different approach to that, which is just conscious coaching, which is essentially on 4 different pillars, which you can go to our website and take a look at for those things. And we have our podcast and the Founder and Force Multiplier book that Hallie and I wrote together and co-authored, has been a #1 bestseller, I think 7 times. Which we're really excited about and making a difference. And we're actually creating a technology piece that goes around with the Founder and Force Multiplier right now.
On that book real quick, Adam, any of our ALC members that are watching this, this is my gift to you. You guys email me right now at this stage of the interview with Adam. He's so kind of giving of his time. I'm going to buy you guys a book. Send me an email and where you want it shipped, and it's coming your way.
Awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you. So I want to highlight some of these numbers, because you were just like boom, 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 boom. And I just want to make sure the people watching this understand the scope of your business. So you said 11 million in GCI,
yes,
right? You said 21.4% profit margin for a company that does, a company that does 11 million in GCI and maintains a 21.4% profit margin is a very, very good business. So that's amazing. I just want to make sure people hear that and they don't start, because a lot of people in our world, a big producer is 11 million and you did 11 million in GCI. So that's awesome. You also said you have 1,100 units. We have a ton of investors that listen to our stuff, watch our stuff, and then inside of our real estate community, 1,100. You just inspired me, man. Thank you so much. That's awesome. 1,100 units is that's insane.
That includes, we've gotten into we got into some healthcare campuses, which is really cool, and building those out, and just start small. That's why I started the story off. I bought one real estate in 2003, and then it really wasn't until 2012 that I was really actually able to build an organization that went out and grew through units and that stuff. But just start small and keep getting your feet wet on things if you're looking to start that investment side of it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Your book's amazing too. Okay, typical life. I know you I'm pretty sure that you you plug into an outlet and you recharge and repower like Iron Man here, but give me a typical day in the life of Adam. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, a lot of people think that I'm very disciplined, and really, that's one word people can use, but I would just kind of look at it a different ways. What I'm really actually good at is saying no, and saying yes to the critical things that I've determined very critical in my life. So I get up about 4 o'clock every morning, not about at 4 a.m., pretty much 7 days a week too. There may be one day on the weekend that I'll sleep in a little bit, but that's 5 or 5:30. But I I wanted to create habits that I just didn't then phase out on the weekends, which I had before. So I kind of keep this flow going pretty close to it 7 days a week, so I don't feel any pulls not to do it. So I get up at 4. The first thing I do is I meditate for 20 minutes. And that's I used what's called transcendental meditation. It's a model based meditation, which has been really impactful for me. And we've gotten a lot of people in our companies doing it, and people that have been part of Project U have had transformational experiences and state changes from all the stuff we worked on. So anyway, meditate for 20 minutes. And then I get into a series of journaling for about 45 minutes, Caleb. And it's a journal. First one is an affirmations journal, just everything I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for the rain. I'm grateful for money. I'm grateful for my health, right? Anything that just comes to mind, I get in there. I use Evernote. And then I get into a journaling about each one of my kids. I have 3 kids underneath 8 years of old. And one day I kind of woke up and really early on, I had my first daughter, and I started asking myself, I'm like, did I really remember my parents or what life was like when I was 4, 5, 6, 7? And maybe you have some glimpses, but not really, right? It wasn't really until probably 10, 12, 13, you can start really remembering stuff. And I said, man, if I were to die tomorrow, I want my kids to know how I felt about them. And so what I do is every day I find something that's new that they said that, or did, good, bad, and different. And I talk about it in their journal. And then I just take a lot of photos, and I bring in the photos to accompany the words, so they have a whole illustration of their life. And I've been doing that now for, almost 6 years for every one of them, starting from when they were actually being conceived inside, my wife, and then kind of going in there so they actually see the whole process of that whole thing unfolding for a couple of them, which is cool. And then I have a journal about my wife, and then I journal about just the good, bad, and the ugly. And this is ultimately, Caleb, what this journal is about clarity and focus for me and for my teams. And so I will journal. If there's something that's really heavily on my mind, I'll really bring it up and try to get that released before. So I'm not thinking about, an event that's causing me to have fear or anger or jealousy or unworthiness or any of those feelings that we can have. I just don't want to bring that into my organization. In fact, I don't have the opportunity to. If I'm going to lead, I can't bring that stuff to work. So I need an outlet, a model, a system to make sure that I am showing up to be the best person I can show up. And that's a way for me to be able to do that, my entire morning routine. So I journal about that. Then I also say, okay, what's the most important thing Caleb needs to do today? What's the most important thing BlackRock or HRG or each individual leader? And I'll start to then ping certain people of saying, make sure this gets done today. Make sure this gets done, or where are we at with this today? And all I'm doing is, and it's not like, look, people in business, it's not like they don't ever want to not work. And that's what I found. If people don't want to work, they're just not going to be in your company, right? Especially people. What I found is that the reason why some organizations don't achieve the results they're looking for is because the leader hasn't provided the direct vision and clarity to allow other people to say no to other things so that they keep just a clear focus on what matters the most. And they take all their energy and they lean into that as a company, right? And so I'm making sure that every day I'm waking up and saying, am I leading their company? And does everyone have clarity on what needs to happen? And that's entirely up to you. And then what you do is you just make sure that's getting translated to everybody else in the company. So there's a trickle down effect from that. Whenever a company, if you're not experiencing the results that you want or expecting, or the returns that you should receive, the first thing I do is I go to myself and saying, am I not being clear with what's expected right now? And typically there's 3 things I always do. And that's the first one. And 90% of the time it's on me. If I'm really honest with myself, it's on me. We like to blame other people. We like to blame the environment or conditions, but ultimately it's typically about me most of the time. If it's not about me, and so if it is about me, then I go do exactly what I just told you to do, is saying, okay, let me just make sure and maybe you don't have to solve this yourself. So Caleb, you're on my team. You and I get together and saying, okay, what do we need to get done this month? What do we need to get done this week? What do we need to get done today? How are we going to win the month? Not just win the year. How are we going to win this month? And you get really people focused on creating those execution plans. And then you just hold them to it. If it's not me, and I go through the exercise and go, it's not me, I'm providing this clarity. The second thing I go is, do I have the right people working on the right things? i.e., do I have the right people that are on the bus in the right seats of the bus? Because a lot of times what you'll find is people just are working on things that maybe they just over time they've naturally had to take on, but it's not really their best use of them. And so then I'll say, okay, can I switch people around with that? You know, you mentioned, we talked about the book a couple of times. In the book, I talk about how when in 2009, when I hired Hallie, I hired her as a listing assistant, and I moved my listing assistant to an EA. And about 2 weeks into this, I realized that Hallie was wanting and willing to put much more into the business than the other person. They were both great people, but she was willing to put much more into the business than she was. So I'm like, damn, Caleb, I think I have this problem here. Like, I think I put the people in the wrong position. So I actually called them both into my office. And I said, I don't know how this is going to go or what's going to happen, but I'm just going to say this because I need to say it. I think you guys are in the wrong positions. And there was silence for a second. I'm like, uh-oh, they're both going to walk out. And they looked at each other and they go, we agree. And so literally right then I said, great, why don't you guys go figure it out, right? They went back and figured it out, and Hallie has, been with me for, 11 years now. And then the other individual ended up moving on, and great person, but just had a different expectation for business, right? And so it's be willing, though, to make peace with the outcome, to have those conversations if people are in the right seats or not. A lot of us as leaders get caught up in imagining what could go wrong or what's going to happen, or imagining having to take back over a role. And so they allow mediocrity of people performing in these positions to occur instead of being and willing to make the tough decisions that other leaders won't. And it's those type of decision-making processes that are going to push an organization forward, or what separates organizations from achieving extraordinary results versus achieving just mediocre or good results. And if you do have the right people in the bus, so it's first you, then the right people in the bus. And the third component is if they are in the right seat of the bus, then either I don't have enough people or I have the wrong people. And so then that'll determine my third level of action of, do we really need to hire somebody? Which most of the time it's probably not, by the way. I just want to caution people on this. They instantly go, well, I think they're telling me that I need to hire somebody. Well, they're only telling you that you need to hire somebody because they may be the wrong person themselves. You need to hear that. It's not that they're bad people. It's just and frankly, Caleb, a lot of times they are maxed out. They are doing everything they can, but they may be operating at a 2, and you're expecting somebody in that position to be operating at 8. It's not them. It's you staying in a relationship with them is causing the stress of the business and for them. So then you wake up and saying, okay, now it's my turn as a leader to say, okay, I need to take that person, either remove them from my world because they'll be relieved, trust me, they will, or can I move them to another seat and then replace that person who really wants to take the organization and operate at an 8. And so I walk myself through that process to make sure to determine I'm keeping people focused on everything that we need to be doing. So ultimately, once I'm done journaling, then I exercise for anywhere between 1 and 2 to 3 hours a day. And I also listen to a bunch of Audible and read or podcast during that time as well too. And then I usually have breakfast with my family, and then I'm at the office and working by 8:30. And I work really good in bursts, which I think a lot of people do. So from 8:30 to 11:30 is open calendar slots. So Amy can put anything in there that makes sense for the things that we need to do from that time. And then from 11:30 to 1 is blocked off again. So I meditate again, which is really important for me to do. I'm also really purposeful on what I eat. So I make sure I'm eating healthy during that time as well. So I pack everything. And then from 1 to 4:30 again is an open time to put stuff in. And then I'm done usually around 4, so I can clean up things from 4 to 4:30, 4 to 45. And then I'm working my way home at that point to do it. And then usually around 4:30 or 5, since I've been up so early and doing these things, I'm just done, to be honest with you. Could I go more? Yes, but I'm just done. I want to not, and I may check some emails and read some stuff, but I'm not really doing anything heavy lifting wise anymore. And that's kind of the natural flow of my day there.
Your battery life is at, you drain most of it at that point.
Yeah. I find I don't make really great decisions towards the end of the day or they're short. And so I just try to prevent myself from, if it's at 4:00 at night, it can wait, most likely can wait till tomorrow when I'm a little fresher and have a different set of eyes on it. And I think people need to bring a little bit more of that into it. If it's a lower level decision, it's fine to make, but most of the decision making that you are making as a leader, particularly once you start having a lot of people in your life, they're not necessarily easy decisions, because they're easy decisions, your leaders are making them. Really the things that start showing up at your desk, which I'm sure you're seeing, are stuff that other people can't handle, right? So that's why they're showing up at your desk, which then requires you to kind of process it maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, and you have to be sharp and everything.
Yeah.
All right, so goal setting. So let's talk about that. How do you goal set for your organizations?
I mean, ultimately, what my job is to set the vision of where we're going, and then I get with each individual company, and I allow the leaders of each individual company to start setting the goals for what it is that we're going to do. So I set the vision of where I want to go, and then the leaders will start setting the goals from that. And then each month, what we do is we do a monthly offsite, or you call them board meetings, whatever you want to call them. I actually got this from Gary. He was very instrumental early on and said, you need to have board meetings, you need to have board meetings, you have board meetings. So we hold a board meeting, and I didn't do this early on in my career. And in fact, it was really most until recently that I started really doing this. And it's something I wish, honestly, I had done a lot earlier. Even if you have 2 or 3 people in your company, you think that you're communicating, you think that you're doing the right things. But when I started actually either getting off site or allocating 3 to 4 hours for just going through, 135 or your business plan or whatever you're going through, what your job as that leader is to make sure are people doing it. And then is the 135 still relevant? Is what they did this month make sense? And then we look at their 135 and saying, okay, Aaron, this is your division. What are you doing in the month of April? What needs to happen? What needs to happen during the month of April? Well, how's the big win? If you get that done, can we all celebrate? And so again, you're going back to, because everyone has a bunch of little things to do, but I'm making certain that does each person have a very clear idea of how they win by moving the entire organization forwards. So that's been instrumental, having these board meetings. And again, 2, 3, 4 hours, they can be offsite, they can just be in a conference room, whatever makes sense for you and your business. I like offsite if you can. And so that's how we set goals, is you set the vision of the company, and then you help provide clarity by just asking a tremendous amount of questions to your people about how they're going to accomplish the goals that we've all set in an organization. Now, if the goal is not large enough, or it's not something that is going to work for me, then that's a different conversation. But most of the people in my world are setting goals that are in line with the vision for what we want. And then my job is just to make sure I'm holding them accountable to these goals. And I don't mean accountable from, Caleb, did you make your calls today? I mean accountable, did they get distracted or not? That's typically what I see. It's not that people aren't working. It's just that they get distracted. That's when you bring it back to, you're saying yes to way too many things. Let's narrow this down and say yes to 1 or 2 things, which is what we just agreed to. And you better be saying no to everything else.
So good. So good. That's an interesting thing, because everyone always says we got to hold people accountable. And a lot of times leaders don't, or especially if they're newer emerging leaders, they don't actually understand that, what that actually means. You just gave definition to that I've actually never heard before. And I really appreciate that is you a lot of times are asking them, did you get distracted? Because most of the time we do. We're humans, yes. Right? So yeah. Awesome. That's super good. You touched on this a little bit about how you focus. It sounds like meditation, exercise. You're really clear on what you say no to. I think I got that. Is there anything else that helps you stay focused?
Yeah, you can't hear this enough, though. People think that they're good at making decisions because they convince themselves that they are, but the reality is most people are terrible at making decisions. I don't mean decisions that are easy, like what color shirt you're wearing today. I mean decisions on what you focus on. I mean, I can't go back to that. It's like there's not a class in grammar school or college that's decision-making 101, at least not that I've seen. And so then people come out there, and if I was trying to sell you tires right now, Caleb, and you're going to be like, I don't need tires. And you go, see, I'm good at saying no. and so people convince themselves that they're really good at saying no. And what I found in my experience is people are good at saying no to things that don't make money because they're easy and they convince themselves they're good. Where business owners in any industry start making mistakes is they start saying yes to things that maybe, let's just call it a scale of 1 to 10. 0 being that you're not making money. 1 means you're making a 1 times return of your activities. People approach this kind of 2, 3, or 4 level, and they get comfortable with the amount of money they're making from 2, 3, or 4. But what I mean about decisions is, what do you have to say no to that's actually making money, but in order to move from a 3 to a 6? Because you only have a finite amount of capital in your head in actual time with your current staff. So when you're all saying yes to something that's producing a 3 times return, you're missing out on the opportunity that's a 6 times return. But in order for you to be even available to seeing what that 6 times return is, you have to be very good at saying no to something that's a 3 times return. And so people miss that connection. And that's why businesses end up staying where they are and not really improving unless the economy improves or the market improves. They're just floating with that wave. But in order to disrupt your business, You have to be willing to say no to a 3 or 4 and say yes to a 6. And then once you start doing that a couple times, you recognize it and you start moving forward. I'll give you a practical example in this. This is in BlackRock. We originally started saying yes to, single family homes and building those one-offs and, maybe grabbing a 2-unit. And at some point, those are making money. And at some point you say, well, I have to bite the bullet. I'm going to put a 60-unit project down and then a 100-unit project down. And so you had to say no, though, to our team working on those smaller units that are making money in order to say yes to the bigger units. And so people can naturally start to do this. I just want to put a little bit more structure to it so they can make sure they're putting that into play, into their business, and that they're actually looking at this on a daily basis.
So, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you. So there's an opportunity cost, even though you're saying no to some things, some things that you're saying yes to are so small that there's an opportunity cost there that, like you said, a 6, 8, 10 times multiple might be out there for you. Yeah. All right. Give me, you've already dropped a ton of lessons that you've already learned, but give me like one, maybe something from Keller or something that's like the biggest lesson that really sticks out to you. I know you gave us a great one with saying no to things.
Well, I'll give you 2. I'll give you one kind of from the personal side, then one from the business side. First, on the personal side, nobody has the right to dumb up your state of being. Nobody has the right to dumb state of being, which just means that when you are getting disturbed actions and it's affecting how you feel, nobody has the right to do that. And so for me, I've gone on a very clear path of making sure that I'm fine because I'm fine with anything that happens. So no matter what somebody or how somebody acts, I'm not going to allow that to affect my current state of being. If you're being affected by somebody else's state of being, that's because you're allowing it. What they're doing is not actually doing it. It's you allowing that to happen. So I made very clear in my life, probably 6, 7 years ago, and it's been a long journey for me, I made very clear that no one was going to actually disturb me inside. Now, they could do anything they want. I could go through bankruptcy. I could go through divorce. I could go through anything none of it was going to change my state of being. And so therefore, when you understand that, you no longer bring in preferences to how you expect life to be. Because the minute you have these preferences on how life can be, you instantly are starting to try to disrupt the reality that's actually unfolding, and you're missing the entire experience of life. Because then you're just caught up in your mind telling you what you think things should do. And I give you this example is a lot of people, when they're even listening to people, they're not listening to the person. They're listening to the mind interpret what the person is actually saying. And so as they're doing that, you're missing the entire experience of life. It's like people are reading a menu, mistaking it for the meal. And so I made a conscious decision that I was no longer going to be reading a menu. I wanted the actual taste of experience of life. And so from the personal side, the lesson that I can share with anybody is that nobody has the right to change up your state of being. And if they are, go deep on that and find out why. And that and they are, because I know that it is. And then just start that process. Just hopefully that's a little wedge in there to kind of go, why is it that something Caleb says or doesn't say can affect me? It's just silly to think about it. There's quadrillion billion moments that happen every second. Most of those aren't affecting. Then why is this one that I happen to be a part of affecting me? Just that's that from the personal side. From the business side, I realized early on that I'm actually very inherently lazy, and that I'm extremely unfocused. And I'll explain that I'm actually very lazy when it comes to things that other people can do. When it comes to things that only I can do, like exercise or meditation or work on that personal stuff that I was talking about, I'm laser focused on it. But when it comes to me working through working in action business, I can get very lazy on that. Because that was a recipe for disaster. So when I woke up and said, well, if I want to operate that way, then I need to get people that are really focused in business and get into a relationship with them. And so then I made my life in 2010, 2011 about learning about myself and learning about people and just never stopping that journey. So I could always be in relationship with people who are much better than me, much more focused than me, much more attentive to me. And that's why, and that's how I started operating my organizations from that standpoint. So whatever you're good at in your business, find somebody and just be okay with that. That's why I share, I actually am very unfocused and I don't like actually to do a lot of these things, but I recognize that. So whatever you are, maybe you are extremely focused, but you're not great at seeing the bigger vision. So then partner with somebody that is, or find somebody that can complement to you. So, but if you want to build a business business equals people, right? So that means you need people in order to build a business, which means you need to be in the people business and not the business of clients for yourself. You need the business of understanding and bringing in the best level of talent into your company that then just grows your organization for you.
Wow, that's amazing. It seems like you're incredibly self-aware. That's one thing I'm picking up with me. You're very aware of Adam, like who you are, your state of being, how you are emotionally, what's going on in your businesses. And I think that that's a big piece that hopefully a lot of people watching this can take away, is that you understand you better than anybody else. And then it seems like you leverage the pieces, like you were saying, for people that you hire people for the gaps that you had, and you're okay with it. I'm not the best at this, and you admitted it. You put your ego aside and said, somebody else is better at this than me. And
because people say that, right, Caleb? And I'm sure in all your coaching with people that you do, you've seen this a lot, and it's hard to tell somebody this when they're in it. But people are like, no, I hire great talent, and I allow people to kind of express their own point of view, and it's just not the case. You're allowing them to express their view when it's convenient for you, or it fits your criteria of how you're thinking, is when you allow people to express your view.
Yeah.
But the minute somebody has a viewpoint that you don't agree with, it's no longer accurate. And then you actually turn it off. And so you're really actually not doing what you're doing. You're saying when it's convenient for you or when it fits your mode of thinking, you allow people to do that, and you convince yourself that's what leadership is.
Yep. Laura, I'm laughing so hard because Laura, who's going to do the editing of this, we just had this conversation yesterday. She just beat me up over this topic. So you literally just said what she said to me yesterday. So there you go, Laura. There's your validation.
There you go.
All right. There's your validation. I was wrong and you were right.
Well, because it challenges. People don't like to be challenged. Like, until you realize that. Here's the thing about this. I always joke when Hallie and I do a founder and force multiplier interview, I said, Hallie pisses me off on a daily basis. And what I really mean by that is she challenges my thinking, which then forces me to go, okay, let that part of you wanting to be right go. The reason why here's my thinking around this for people that want to go more of an analytical side of this. If you are right, let's just say you are right, then what's the harm of somebody else challenging you? The only thing it does is strengthening your ability to be right, then allowing the rest of the team to get on board, because everybody's now proved that your idea is accurate. And if you're wrong, which we are a lot of times, more times than we're right? If you're wrong, it just saved you from making a poor decision if you allow yourself to be challenged. Right. So in either case, it's strengthening the argument for allowing yourself to bring an idea in there, put it in the center like you put like a game board, like thinking it that way, and allow everyone to go after it. Stop personalizing it. Your thought isn't original. Put it out there, and who cares if you're right or wrong? What you're looking for is the best solution in the organization.
Keep moving. Absolutely. All right. So a lot of people watching this, a lot of people in our world have teams, and a big thing that comes up a lot is providing value to them. How do you get people to stay at HRG? What value do you show them? Give us some insight into you there.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, the people that I'm working with are high-level leaders. They're rightfully leading large organizations. I mean, we have teams that are doing 50 deals a month. I mean, we actually have a team in one of the market centers that you're in Reed, 49 deals in a month, right? So we have we have teams that are doing massive amounts of business. So what they come for me is not necessarily for me to tell them how to get a listing or how to get a buyer. So depending on what level you're at, that may be something you need to do. Early on, when I was hiring buyer agents, I was leading the buyer agents in how to think about getting clients, how to think about interacting with people, how to do listing appointments, how to do buyer appointments, how to do an open house. As you evolve, so should your thinking. So the principle around leadership and having you keep people engaged in your organization is that you need to always be the thought leader for the organization. Because when people say, hey, I want to go follow Caleb, it's not like they're walking around the mall following you, like physically, right? That's what people, they use that word follow, but they don't really understand what it means. What that means is that Caleb is expanding his thinking through input so that he can take now and create his own idea of output, which then creates a different level of thinking, which is higher than everybody else in the organization, which then in turns create this vortex that people can then follow through their level of thinking, which then transform their thinking, which then changes their actions. So your job, whatever level you're doing this at, is to always be the thought leader / kind of, they call it visionary. I'm just saying it a different way so people don't get lost in these mystical words, right? Of just literally transforming your thinking so you then are always staying ahead of everybody with how you're viewing the world, how you're viewing business, and where people's focus should be, so that you can constantly, then they can just always see that they're growing. It's like, you can't have a glass full of water, pouring water in the glass that's already full. It's just not doing anything. And that's where, by the way, where people go and leave is because I just got on the phone with somebody or a Zoom call with a group that's, $30, $40 million team that wants to join HRG. And what I explained to them was why they left their team after 10 years. They were doing it outside of KW, was because not that because something changed, but what changed is their thinking became stagnant. They couldn't grow their perspective. They couldn't grow through their thoughts, which then created a different level of action that they could take. And so when that happens, people then go, am I at the right company? What's going on over here? Where's that going over there? It's not that the company changed. What changed was your ability to no longer grow to what's acceptable to you. And when that growth stops, I'm just explaining because people know these concepts, but I'm trying to explain it differently. When the growth stops, that's when people start questioning whether they're in the right place or the right thing. And they say, well, the company's just changed. I don't have that right feeling. No. What changed was either you, as the leader, stopped growing and no longer could create that vortex for people to follow you. So when people follow you, what they're following is your trail of your thinking patterns. So you as a leader, how to keep people engaged and how to keep people in your organization is to always make sure you're leading people through their level of thinking that is always raising them up.
Keep lifting them, trying to get them all, or keep having those conversations around them, like you said, in that vortex that grow them.
Which is why self-leadership is the most important part of this.
Yeah, and keep working on it. That's my biggest takeaway already. So, all right, Adam, I'm totally impressed, dude. You don't need to hear that from me, but my mind has been blown. Thank you for lifting my thinking up. Thank you for adding value to everybody that's going to watch this. I appreciate that very much. Where can people go to find more about Adam and what you're working on?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. You can go to adamhergenrother.com. We completely redid that site last year with a ton of free, valuable insights, information, everything about our organizations that we have in there. I'd also encourage people to go to our podcast, which is Business Meets Spirituality. It's on adamhergenrother.com. We launched about 5 or 6 months ago, and we're in 50 plus countries and performing in the top 20% of all Apple podcasts, which is just really cool to hear. And so if you like this kind of message, we don't interview people. It's either Hallie and I just kind of on talking similar to this about real life situations from 2 different perspectives. So if you want to take a look at it, we'd love to get your insights onto what you're thinking from the podcast.
Absolutely. We'll put your website in the description of the video. We'll do and we'll put your podcast in there as well. We'll also put your book.
Awesome.
Adam, thank you so much for your time today. Our primary goal today was to speak to our top producers in our real estate community, and I believe you did just that. I appreciate everything that you shared with us, and these takeaways have added a ton of value to my life, and I know they're going to help a bunch of our agents. So thanks, Adam.